Do you think there will be another coal plant, like a power plant, built in the United States? I think there will not.
It is possible, but not probable.
Okay.
And I say that because there are a lot of really extraordinary things that could happen geopolitically, and or like, God forbid, we have like another mass extinction event, and we don't have the people that are smart enough to come and drill wells for a while.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to the On the Rise podcast. I'm your host, Marcius Extavour. Check us out on YouTube, where we love your likes, shares, and subscribes. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or anywhere you like to listen to audio podcasts. Today, we're talking about energy. If aliens landed today and took a look around, they might say, these funny creatures are still using this organic sludge that they call oil and gas for most of their energy. They're using the residue of trillions and trillions of insects and plants that have died, rotted, fallen into the earth and decomposed over millions of years and become oil and gas. That's what oil and gas is, with a few dinosaurs mixed in. That's where most of our energy comes from. I got into the world of energy first as a person focused on lasers and chips and semiconductors and optics, and that led me into solar devices. And solar got me interested in the broader energy world. Anytime I enter a new field or I'm trying to learn something new, I start by trying to master the absolute basics. And when you start reading about energy, the first thing that smacks you in the face is that, 80%, the vast majority of the energy we use right now, today, to power our human societies and communities, comes from fossil fuels. That's just a fact. Cut to the present day, I've worked in and around energy for around 20 years. And in all that time, I've worked on a huge array of topics with a huge array of people. From renewables and power to oil and gas to carbon management and carbon removal, and now even energy markets and electricity markets. In that time, I've come across a huge range of people. Just like energy is very diverse, this is what makes it fun. The range of people and perspectives that you meet in the energy world is also very broad. My perspective on the energy system is that even though oil and gas dominate the energy mix today, it won't always be this way. There was a time before oil and gas, about 150 years ago, and there'll be a time after oil and gas. I don't think oil and gas is ever going to go completely down to zero, but I think the sooner we can get to a state where oil and gas is not our primary source of energy, the better off we will be. Specifically, healthier, because we'll have less polluting energy sources. Pollution from oil and gas already is a problem. It's been a problem for decades. Second reason is prosperity. New ways of generating electricity, like renewables or nuclear or geothermal, distributing energy, using energy through networked grids and smarter grids, they just work better than the systems we have now, and that's why they're slowly being integrated in our energy system today. And the third reason is it's going to unlock new eras of technology development. Oil and gas works great for thermal energy, but for greater uses of electricity, for more concentrated uses of electricity, and for all kinds of new manufacturing, AI data centers are an example, new manufacturing is another example. New forms of energy are going to be better fit for purpose, and I think that's slowly going to become obvious over the coming decades. But whether you believe oil and gas needs to end tomorrow, or whether you think we're going to maintain our 100 million barrels per day consumption rate indefinitely, it's very important to understand how oil and gas works and the perspectives of people that work in and around the oil and gas part of the energy system. To help us unpack this, today's guest is Allyson Anderson Book, a geologist turned energy executive who has worked in all aspects of the energy system and knows the science, the technology, and the business really well. I asked Allyson to come on specifically for two reasons. I mean, there's tons of smart, creative, and wise energy people out there, but I really wanted to have Allyson on, and here's why. First reason is she and I have history together. We were colleagues on the U.S. Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources in Washington, D.C. years ago. This is the part of the Senate that covers anything to do with natural resources and energy, as the name suggests. She was actually my boss and mentor there. We got to know each other really well. Which brings me to the second reason. I know Allyson well enough to know that she and I do not agree about everything. In fact, we disagree on a huge range of topics or approaches inside the energy system. Maybe more than disagree, we see things from different perspectives. I didn't want this to be a debate. I wanted to bring some genuine curiosity to try to understand why she thinks the things she does and how she sees the energy system. The key takeaway for me is that it's really important to engage with these perspectives and to understand them. The way Allyson sees the energy system is not really a wild take or an outsider view. it's a pretty mainstream view of energy and of our energy systems, not just for people that work in the industry, but for other people that may be casual observers. You may hear some things you don't like. You'll probably hear some things you disagree with, and a bunch of other stuff that is new to you or that you do agree with. The key point here is that I really think it's important to engage with these perspectives and also to remember that we really can have constructive disagreements with our friends, with our colleagues, with other people in the energy system without tearing each other to pieces. I really believe there's still room for that, and I hope that the conversation with Allyson and I today is one example of that. Here comes my conversation, part 1, with Allyson Anderson Book.
Thanks for doing this. I know we talked about this a while ago, and now finally we found the opportunity. We're here in Florence to really do it. The first thing I want to get into is this object. What is
This object?
We were talking about it on the way in. I'm going
Yes.
to read, I know it's some piece of Baker Hughes history. I'm going to read the plaque. Did you know what this was before we got here?
I knew that this was a part of a turbine
Yeah.
that generates a lot of power, and it's the inside of it.
Yes.
Okay.
A gas turbine with high availability and reliability, et cetera, et cetera. It's a gas turbine.
But you should say it can generate more than 10 megawatts. That is no slouch.
When is this? Do you know what era this is from?
I don't.
I don't think it's a modern. I should know that. I don't. It says PGT 10A. Anyways, we can look that up.
Well,
We
I
can
would
add it
say
in the notes
this.
later.
We'll look it up later. But my expertise is in the borehole
Okay.
and with oil and gas, the exploratory side. And so me coming to Baker Hughes, I learned about turbines after I got here mostly.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know more about boreholes. You've probably forgotten more about boreholes than I've ever known. But I have seen
Probably.
devices like this, and I think they're extremely cool. And just like for fun, I think it's fascinating that this is pretty much the same, not the identical, but pretty much the same technologies in jet engines. I don't think that's like widely understood, but it's pretty cool. If you ever
Yeah.
peer into a jet engine, it looks a bit like that.
Science.
Science for the win.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Allyson Anderson, you're the Chief Sustainability Officer at Baker Hughes. You are an expert in all things to do with energy, policy. You work on climate, technology, community. Thank you for doing this with me.
Absolutely.
We've worked together before. You have
We
been a
did.
mentor to me over time. You were
Yes.
my boss on the Hill.
Yes.
It's funny, as I was thinking about this conversation and even putting this podcast together, some of the lessons that you taught me about how the industry works, how the physical science works of it, kind of stuck with me all this time. And so they're a little bit on my mind.
Excellent. I hope it was good advice.
Maybe. We'll see.
Okay. All right.
We'll let the audience judge. Okay, I want to start by just getting an understanding of Baker Hughes.
Okay.
I heard somebody at dinner say last night, I'd never heard of Baker Hughes. And that's sort of shocking for me to hear. But there was a time when I didn't know about Baker Hughes. All I knew was the rig count, the Baker Hughes rig count.
Oh, yes.
Which
that's
senators
good.
would
That's
print
good.
out and wave around in briefings
Yes.
and, stage speeches from the floor. I mean, real speeches from the floor of the Senate.
Congress likes the rig count. Yeah.
Give us an introduction, especially for people that just don't follow the industry. What is Baker Hughes and what is its role in the broader energy landscape?
So, Baker Hughes is a company that was founded about 115 plus years ago. It's actually the original, there was Baker and there was Hughes. There were two guys.
Yeah.
Okay, they got together and they created the company. Since then, it's been a lot of different things, but the core part of the company is that it's an oil and gas service provider, basically equipment and service provider.
Okay.
But much has happened since then, and most notably in the most recent part of the company's history has been that we were acquired by GE, or there was a merger, and GE has oil and gas, which most humans on the planet don't seem to know, that GE isn't just like appliances and light bulbs, the aviation, medical, and a whole bunch of things, but they had oil and gas. And so then the moment that we were acquired or merged with them, they basically said, oh, yeah, we're going to spin it out. And so then we became Baker Hughes and kept the Baker Hughes name. And so that's where we're at today. So the fact that we're sitting in front of some of the early Nova Pignone, which is the turbines, compressors, and a bunch of other equipment, are manufactured here in Florence, Italy, in our Nova Pignone campus.
Oh, I didn't know that. They're manufactured here.
Yeah.
Cool.
Do you get are you taking a tour?
I haven't signed up for one, so I'm going to say hopefully yes. I mean, I love gear. I love tours of all types. So
If you haven't signed up,
yeah, okay. Well,
you'll have to come back.
I wish I knew somebody at Baker Hughes that I could.
We'll see what we can do.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, I know I want to speak about our personal history together,
Yeah.
but how did you find your way sort of to Baker Hughes, like on your professional path?
So I feel like I need to add something about Baker Hughes.
Yeah, please.
While we've been this like classic oil and gas service provider, I, at the beginning of my career, first interacted with Baker Hughes, I'd say outside of the academic universe when I went to work for ExxonMobil. I was working on the formation evaluation group. So for people who might not know what that is, we are the people who look at that nexus of like physics and rocks, and we use physics to determine what the lithology or the rock type is. Okay, and so I was in that team. And when you're drilling a well, you've got these service companies that come in and they have their tools and stuff like that. And so I would help to design parts of the well and the logging tools that you would put in the hole. And so that's how I became familiar with Baker Hughes. It was a very long time ago. And then, because I started when I was 12, and so that was approximately 20 years ago, 25 years ago, because I was definitely a spring chicken, okay? And a prodigy.
Those science fair projects really
No,
pay off.
I just went straight into logging equipment,
right.
like in high school. That was it. Yeah, totally. So, but the modern version of Baker Hughes has turbines, power generation, valves, hydrogen equipment. We're in carbon capture and storage.
Yeah.
We've been in geothermal for a very, very long time because the technology that you use in the subsurface, you'd use it for anything in subsurface, basically.
Okay.
Right? Okay. So that was when I first got to know Baker Hughes, and like I got to know all of the service companies. Baker was our favorite in my part of the company because they had the nicest people. Like they're just super nice. They were really attentive.
Just like cordial and friendly, or
Yeah. You go out to lunch and you got to know your salesperson and you knew their kids, and it was just lovely. And so years later, in the path where we met, and then I went on to some other things, I was at an inflection point and starting to think about what do I want to do next, and then they called and recruited me to come over.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so you gave us a really cool overview of the huge range of different technology types and sort of products and services, let's say, that Baker Hughes provides. Can you help us situate that like in the broader energy industry? So I think people know things like Exxon drills for oil. GE makes power plants. Electricity company sells you electricity. Like help us sort of map out at a high level, like the energy value chain, if you could,
Yeah.
for people that don't think about this every day, and then help us understand where Baker Hughes is in that landscape.
Well, I wish we could turn the camera on and look at the pictures on the wall, because it really gives a great history of the whole sector. I actually kind of start where people turn the lights on. Okay. Because years ago, when I was younger, when we worked on the Hill, you may remember that I would set up some field trips, and there'd be field trips, and we'd go and see some neat technology. And so I'd bring my mom, okay? And so my mom once joined me at Four Corners, and we went to see a coal-fired power plant. But before we went, the price of entry was, I said, Mom, where do you think our power comes from? And then she sat there and she said, well, would it be too cute if I said the wall? I said, and I laughed and I was like, it's cute, okay, but it's not from the wall, and you know it. And she's like, nope, I believe that it's from coal. And she was actually right. And so I was very proud of the fact that my mom knew where our power came from.
I mean, saying from on the wall is not wrong, you know?
It does
it's
actually
incomplete,
come
let's say.
via a plug, right? Okay, but, and so she had known that our house was sitting above a former coal mine in coal tunnels, which is what my high school was built on. You could see it in the tiering on the street, which is a neat thing for her to know. But so I said, well, that's great. All right, so just so you know, our vacation is we're going to go to a coal plant. And so we did. And before one of our staff meetings down in New Mexico. And so I have a picture of her in her hard hat and everything. And so she really learned about that. So like that kind of power, I think, is easier for people to understand, because you dig up a thing, okay, or you pull it out of the ground somehow, and then you move it someplace and you burn it, okay? But what people don't realize is what happens when you burn it. You got to have something that's a turbine. It's got to actually fire a turbine, so it's turning to create the electrons, right? And so this is pretty good location that you selected here.
let me just say briefly, we are in the Baker Hughes Learning Center. So you can't see this on camera, but we're surrounded by plaques and information. It's a bit like a museum, like a technology center.
Yeah. So when you think about the oil and gas piece, though, there's so many steps before you could get an electron to come out of the wall. Most people think about oil and gas, they think about gas that goes in your car.
Yeah.
All right. So I like to take it pretty far back from that. Okay. So if we use the same analogy and say, like, what happens to get the gas in the pump to put in your car? If you're backing that up, a truck has brought it from a blending facility where it's mixed in with other fuels.
Some truck full of this liquid.
This liquid fuel, okay, and then, but before the blending wall, you go back up, and it was brought out of a chemical refining process.
Yep.
Okay, at a oil and gas refinery. All right.
Like a chemistry set, the size of like a city block. That's how I think about it.
It's pretty amazing. I can't remember if I ever took my mom to an oil and gas refinery.
LA is full of some gigantic gasoline refineries.
Yes.
And so you'll be driving on the 405 and it's like, it took 2 minutes to drive by this thing.
Oh, it was that big?
It's one of the major gasoline sources in California, which is a huge gas guzzling place. So.
Do you know who? I bet I know who it is.
Well, this is a funny story. When we moved to LA, we stayed in a hotel while we were waiting for our stuff to arrive by truck. And we stayed at a hotel, it's like some cheap hotel that happened to be across the street from the Torrance refinery. And that refinery was famous because they had, this is a crazy story, but they had a very near miss accident, which it would have been a horrible monumental disaster, a public disaster. It wasn't. It was a near miss of that. But because of that, the gasoline refinery was shut down, blah, blah, blah. Gas prices were higher. Yeah. Of course, I found this out because I'm a nerd. I'm like, oh, what's that? Let me look into this. But yes, some of the enormous refineries that you don't often see them at that scale. But in any case, you were talking about this stuff has got to come out of a refinery.
Yeah. It comes out of a refinery. Okay, so it doesn't come out of the ground that way, despite what people think, right? Okay, so basically, then you're going up from that. So how did the oil in the first place, or gas, whatever you're dealing with, how did that get to that place? Well, it usually goes by pipeline.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we're thinking in the North American example, it might come out of a place like Texas or Oklahoma or something like that. It could even come out of parts of Pennsylvania. And so basically that liquid crude is going to come via pipeline to a refinery.
Yep.
Now, so where did the pipeline come from, right? So we're still backing it up. We're going back to where it's extracted. And so basically, companies like ours are in the parts up front. Well, we're in many parts of this value chain. So I'm giving the backwards view. I actually think right to left and read right to left, which is why this works for me.
Interesting.
I know. I read a book from the back to the front. I know
Arabic is in your future.
I think I'd do better if I was reading, Japanese or something. So at any rate, as you move back up the value chain, you're going back up to the extraction point, and that's what people think about when they hear like drill, baby, drill, and all of those kinds of phrases. It's because there's going to be a service company or a dozen service companies that come to a site, and they actually look at drilling a borehole into the ground. And it's not a soda straw, okay? It's not, we don't punch a hole. It's a very complex. It's a very safe, because we spend so much time focused on safety. Operation that will take days to weeks, sometimes over a month or so, depending on the complexity and the pressure in the well. And you drill to depths that can range, if we're gonna say drill a water well, it's really shallow. Oil and gas can be pretty deep, okay? And so as you're extracting that out, it's got mud in it and some other things. And so you pull that out and you basically get your product that you could then ship to someplace else.
Okay, so, and you said, just one more time, Baker Hughes is involved in kind of all aspects of that value chain, is that right?
Yeah. Okay, so that part, that's the extractive part that I went to last. I did that deliberately so I could say that part is the upstream.
Right.
Okay, and so the extractive industry part is when you hear about Chevron and Shell and other companies, operators, okay? They're the ones operating the business that does the extraction.
Yep.
Okay? And just because there's an operator doesn't mean they're the shipping, the midstream part.
Now here we go, yeah.
Yep. There may be another group that comes in and ships it, right? And then there's the downstream. And the downstream is what I spoke to you in the beginning.
Yeah.
And so it's not going down the hill, just so that people don't really think that. But the downstream part means that's where it's going for the refining. Okay, or it's coming closer to going to a final product, going to market.
That's cool. I really appreciate that explanation, and like you're sort of explaining how Baker Hughes is sort of a service and technology provider at various levels. I think it's not that people see name brands, especially like gasoline retailers, right?
Yeah.
Like Shell or Gulf,
Yeah.
you know. I think Chevron is the one near my house, closest to me. Like that's where I fill up.
I mean, they have had their quarters close to where you live for a while.
Yes. Well,
Yes.
this is like the Santa Rosa Chevron near me now.
Oh,
We
okay.
moved,
All right. But I mean,
yeah.
it's still relatively close.
No, but like, you know, Baker Hughes is an example, but I don't think it's like widely appreciated that there's a huge, you know, thousands of different supplier companies that are
Correct.
all part of this value chain. And, you know, even in electricity or in oil and gas and liquids, it's actually a huge, extremely deep and sort of rich, complicated system.
Oh, it is. I mean, it's worth noting the Baker Hughes that we are today is not simply an oil and gas services company. Today we make technology. While we say we focus on energy technology, we also, because it's generating power or
Yeah.
it's extracting something that turns into power,
Yeah.
we also use those in other sectors and industries. Like one of my favorite examples is that we have a turbine that we sold to a glove manufacturer, for instance.
Gloves?
Yeah, like rubber and latex gloves.
Oh, what do they want a turbine for?
Power.
Oh, I get it.
For their factory, right? Okay,
Wow.
so, right. And so power goes into everywhere,
Yeah.
right? And so, so we also have we have an inspections business that is like my absolute favorite to talk about. And it's a pretty diverse set of inspection. You can look inside of a pipeline. You could technically make it big enough and look inside of a car if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
Look inside of your phone. The idea is that you non-destructively get to see inside an object. Kind of like we do with the human body, we x-ray and we MRI, but we have the technology, we build the machine that allows a company to take and inspect their things.
Okay, cool.
Which is pretty cool.
One last Baker Hughes question.
Yeah.
The rig count. So we work together on the Hill,
Yeah.
work in the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee. We were just reminiscing actually in the car a little bit over here about some of the people we used to know in the Bingaman universe, Senator Bingaman. The rig count, you know, I showed up as like a fresh-faced fellow, and I became aware of the rig count. What is the rig count, and is it still a Baker Hughes thing?
It's still Baker's thing, and the rig count basically allows us to, it's kind of a proxy for the onshore offshore activity that's happening. And so a lot of investors and other stakeholders look at it to get a sense of how active is Baker Hughes or the sector.
And it's counting literally how many drilling and service rigs are leased in the field at a certain given time, is that right? Okay.
Versus idle. Okay, so
Yes.
because there's usually an inventory, right? And so there'll be a portion that's idle and then a part that's out in different areas, and so we count that.
I always thought a cool analogy for that was people that are into real estate or condos or things like that will track how many cranes are on the ground in a given city. And Toronto, where I'm from, all through the 2000s, we were told every day, like, Toronto is the leader in the world, the number of cranes. And most people would just be like, who cares? Another 80-story tower is going up, like, boring. But similar, you know, very complex equipment. It's often leased or provided by an external provider. And counting it tells you something about the state of construction or real estate. It tells you something about the market, right?
Oh yeah, and like the context that we were using it for, just for anyone who decides that they want to spend time with us and listen to this, is that when you're working in public policy, you have to figure out a way to translate to people who don't know all the answers and don't really understand what different metrics and things are. And so the rig count was this really easy to understand way to talk about how robust the oil and gas sector is, right? And so that would come up all the time. We were always using the rig count for various things. You'd actually see the Baker Hughes rig count listed in floor speeches or show up in posters on the floor of the Senate or the House, which is pretty cool. I don't know that they use it the same way today.
Okay.
And maybe we're just getting old.
It could be. It could be that we're just reminiscing about 2010.
In the way back.
Okay, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the energy transition. So we're at the Baker Hughes annual meeting, which is what we just exited to run over here and do this. And there's been a lot of discussion about energy transition. I've heard people say it's still going in the same direction, but slowing down. I heard an analyst that you may know say that the other day on the radio. I've heard a few people say it's really in tough shape. I've heard people say, actually, the U.S. Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright, one of the things he's famous for is saying there is no energy transition. So is there an energy transition?
So I don't see there's a slowdown. Okay.
Really?
I really don't.
Okay.
I think it's just the expectations is that we'd speed up. So if we thought the acceleration was going to be a certain bit, then us not moving at the same acceleration, I know this is like splitting hairs, okay, is going to seem like a slowdown.
So slow down with respect to expectation of acceleration,
Yes.
but not an objective slowdown.
Correct.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
That is exactly what I'm saying. Thank you
Okay.
for speaking my language. And so the energy transition is a term that is kind of polarizing, but not in the way that some of like U.S. election politics is
Yeah,
polarizing.
say more.
So what's polarizing is that you've got a camp of people who has said, but we've always transitioned to energy, okay? But when you think about a transition, it's implied that you're going away from one state to move into another state, okay? But what we've instead done is we've added to the fuel mix, okay, in the energy fuel mix. And so over time, like if the example I routinely give is, if we think about when the power goes out, what do we do? Like, what kind of power do we reach for? Like, what do you do? Like,
Yeah.
there's an earthquake and like, there's no power. Oh my God. Like, no gas. What do you do? What do you use?
Maybe emergency backup sources if you happen to have one.
Like what? He's good.
Candles,
Candles.
charged batteries.
Candles. Okay. So the last time the power went out, we had little portable lights. So we're using batteries.
Oh, I
okay?
see, yeah.
Yeah, and we're using candles, but we had the power go out in the DMV area just 2 days ago for 3 hours, because that happens all the time in the nation's capital. We get power outages, and so I could put on our gas stove, so I used gas.
Oh, I see. The
I
electricity
used
went out. Okay.
I used electricity, and I used a candle.
Yeah.
Right. I really just needed to whip out some coal and start heating. Now I do have coal in my house, but it's not for that. So my point is, we rely on what we have. We've never actually phased out anything. We never transitioned away any fuel source, okay? So transition's weird. So maybe that's a part of that. Okay, but the other part is it's more about it being a transition to a lower carbon state. And we've never done that before either.
I think when the average person, if they hear that phrase, or certainly the average person that is coming from the climate mindset,
Yeah.
when they hear energy transition, what they think is fossil fuels go away,
Yeah.
solar and wind go up.
Yeah.
So
I mean, and that's one way of looking at the energy transition, right?
Yeah.
Is that it's been historically said it's a transition away for fossil fuels.
okay.
Now, I can make the case that there are a lot of fuels that have a fossil aspect but we're not phasing out. But I won't get into that. But to transition away from any one fuel type at this point is probably not good for society.
Ooh. We're going to come back to this.
Okay. And I say that because of like that example with the power, right?
Yeah.
Like we don't have a backup generator at our house. Like the power does go out at least once a month. So we rely on everything.
I see where you're coming from with that.
Yeah.
And I was preparing, I prepared a sort of a new energy talk for a thing I wanted to give last year.
Yeah.
And one of the slides I put together was I just enumerated all the energy sources I could think of from, in the beginning there were mussels. And then we used the animals' muscles. And then we got fire, all the way back.
Yeah.
All the way to, I don't know, nuclear fusion or something that might happen in the future. And of this long list of, 15, 20 different sources,
Yeah.
I had the same realization that you have just said right now, which is we never really stopped using any of these things.
No.
Okay, technically we've not stopped using muscle power. I know that's trivial, that doesn't power the world, but
Yeah.
we haven't stopped. But even things like collecting sticks, like how many million people are collecting sticks to cook their dinner tonight on planet Earth?
Probably quite a few.
Peat.
Yes. Still
Plus-
burning peat,
Right.
animal, dung,
So
all of it.
even though I'm the type of person that's working as aggressively as possible
Yeah.
to get to that clean energy future, I'm grappling with when do we ever give anything up? Do we just add things, or
We
do we
just keep adding
we
things.
just right?
I think it is possible and likely that at some point coal is out. Okay, but we're still going to hold that in reserve in the event that we need it.
I think,
Humanity will.
quick question on this. Let's bet lunch. Do you think there will be another coal plant, like a power plant, built in the United States? I think there will not.
It is possible, but not probable.
Okay.
And I say that because there are a lot of really extraordinary things that could happen geopolitically, and or God forbid, we have another mass extinction event, and we don't have the people that are smart enough to come and drill wells for oil or produce. Yeah.
Okay. Fair.
Because the world's gone through
Never say
tremendous
never.
things. I am a geologist, and I think a long time.
And we both just finished agreeing that we don't give stuff up. We only add things in a sense. But in that regional, anyway, that's just something I think about because I did a bunch of work at.
I do not think it's probable.
I don't think so either.
Okay. If anything, if we needed to use coal again, we'd probably resurrect something
Exactly.
that has been mothballed, right?
That's
but
right.
But
for a new build.
Coal going away is of high likelihood at this point.
Okay, on transition, I'd love your help in mapping out another important concept. It came up a lot at this meeting, it continues to. The energy trilemma.
Yes.
Energy people talk about this all day. What is the energy trilemma and why should anybody care about it?
It's basically that says we need energy to be reliable, affordable, and sustainable. Okay, so we want to make sure that for those of us who live in Virginia, in the DMV, that we have power all the time. I'm talking to you, Dominion. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
And so for better or for worse, there are still parts of the world that don't have power on demand. We mostly do.
Yeah.
And I really mean, I'm all joking aside, in the global south, there's a lot of people that do not have primary power. Something like 2 billion people don't have reliable primary power. And of the 2 billion, 1 billion have no power.
That's right.
Okay. And so my first world inconvenience should be ignored. Okay. But so that's on the access and reliability, right? The affordability is, there's a big reason why parts of the world don't have energy. It's because it's not affordable where they're at. There's not infrastructure. Countries can't afford it. And so we've got to look at ways that we can come and bring energy into those areas that have energy poverty today.
Is it an affordability problem or is it bad planning and poor government execution?
I think it's all of it. I mean,
It's got to be some of the latter,
Yeah.
right?
but you're going to have affordability problem if you've got poor execution anyway,
Fair.
right? So to me, they kind of all put it in the planning bucket.
Okay.
And then we get to sustainability, and what we really mean there is that it's a fuel type that gets us lower emissions, that can get us also less impact to the environment, less impact to human health,
Yeah.
right? All the things. And so there is no reason why the majority of the fuel types that are out there cannot be modified to make them more sustainable. And so I look at the energy transition as, yes, we're going to move energy to its most sustainable state, not just with emissions, but with all of it.
Okay. I want to hold on to that idea of most sustainable state. Come back to that in a
Yeah.
minute. A couple other things on the transition. So, as you know, I've worked closer to, let's say, clean tech development than, let's say, traditional oil field services. That's just sort of where my work is. Mm-hmm. And a lot of clean tech entrepreneurs have the following dilemma. Mm-hmm. They start a new technology-based business. It starts to gain some traction, seems like a good idea, seems like it'd be a good business. Then it's time for them to start growing and scaling.
Yeah.
And guess who knows how to grow and scale, hardware, technology, infrastructure in the real world? The oil and gas industry. And then all their friends tell them, you can't take money from the oil and gas industry.
So you don't get in trouble with any one company. Let's let's call them Acme.
Acme Co.
Acme Co.
has a corporate venture arm.
Yes.
That invests.
Oh.
So Acme Co. is involved in oil and gas development or fossil development, and the startup entrepreneur, the clean tech entrepreneur, faces this pressure. On the one hand, there's a partner that has the capabilities and money to help you on your journey. On the other hand, you will get ripped from your other stakeholder group if you associate with them.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Do you ever encounter that in your work? And how do you wrestle with that?
We have seen that, not so much on the putting the investment in technology, because most of the time entrepreneurs, especially because a lot of the most brilliant inventions come out of the academic sense.
Yeah.
Okay. And so they see that like a lot of the innovation that they want to do is with big companies, right? And so I don't see it as much there. I do see it when we try to interact in public dialogues.
Okay.
I say we, the collective energy sector, and we'll have all, because like our company works incredibly hard to keep our emissions down, and the amount of change that we've done to change the profile of business is really quite spectacular.
Yeah.
And you can see it as you're walking around, you know, like we're for real. And so when a company says like, well, we don't want you as a sponsor because you're an oil and gas company, I'm like, well, if you understood, we actually are not an oil and gas company.
Yes.
We manufacture technology, and it happens to be our biggest market segment sits in oil and gas. Okay. And
Acmeco, though. Let's say Acmeco. Like,
yeah, it's with Acme. Okay.
All right.
And so, you know, and then I want to say, but we make technology that might inspect your phone. And then they're sort of, I don't know, I'm deeply uncomfortable, right? And so I see that.
Yeah.
But like, the real thing we should think about is if we want to see meaningful change in the world, everybody's got to have skin in the game. And if we don't all have skin in the game, there's got to be somebody that always opposes, right? So everybody's got to be, we don't have to agree. But we've all at least got to come together and try.
Well, you were looking into our history, you were one of the first people that I felt like I really developed a deep and trusting working relationship with, even though we didn't agree on all things.
It's
and
true.
Like, that's great. And frankly, I hope we can like continue exploring that today.
Yeah.
Okay, you said something interesting though that I want to pick on a little bit. You said, we're a technology company and we make all kinds of technologies, and it just happens that a lot of our technology is useful in oil and gas, and it happens to be a big segment for us.
Yeah.
I met a gentleman from BlackRock a couple years ago during Climate Week.
Yeah.
It was a chance encounter.
Yeah.
It's actually really cool. We met at a jazz club.
They're one of our investors.
Okay, and
Yep.
so he was trying to, we sort of did this dance, or he became clear that like I knew what BlackRock was, it became clear to me he knew what Climate Week was, and then we went down this deep rabbit hole of like, let's really talk about climate finance. And I was sort of like, what the F, buddy? Like, that was my stance. And he was trying to make the claim to me, or he was making the claim to me that BlackRock is the world's largest asset holder, private asset manager. They manage more people's money than anyone else. And he was claiming, and I was like, how's it going with ESG? You know, ESG is kind of down, it's under a lot of political pressure in the United States, how are you guys feeling that? And he was like, well, we're all over DC trying to explain BlackRock is the world's leading ESG investor. And I was sort of like, what the F are you talking about? And his argument was, we are doing the most, dollar by dollar. Yes, we are also all over, you know, iron ore and coal and oil and gas and a million other things. So just by virtue of being enormous, we're in everything, including ESG and sustainability aligned investment.
And they're big in investing in other sectors as well that people also like to hate on.
It gets, you know, it's like, so what he was saying I think is objectively true, but then it also has a messaging problem. Okay, so let me throw another question at you, because you talked about...
I just got to say, that wasn't a question.
That was a statement.
You were on a podium.
I am on a white chair at the Baker Hughes Learning Center with the Allyson Anderson Book. Some people like to look at COP, the climate COP, International UN's big climate festival meeting, negotiations.
It's not a festival, man.
It's not a festival. It's
a very
bad
serious
food
business.
and...
It really is truly bad cuisine usually.
You got to leave the tent to get the good food.
Yeah.
People lately, it's become fashionable to count the number of fossil fuel associated delegates.
Yes.
And say that number is going up, therefore something.
Yes.
I mean,
that's definitely happened already.
You can guess what the something is. The typical critique is it's full of lobbyists. They're here to co-opt and corrupt the process.
I've heard capture.
Regulatory and state capture, these are phrases that are used. I think there's some truth. I think regulatory and state capture is a real thing in the world. But the question is, fossil fuel delegates, or people that know and work in the oil industry, gas industry, other energy sectors, is it helpful or hurtful to have those folks at a meeting like COP? You spoke about engagement a minute ago.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
As I said, we've got to have everybody there, because if we expect society to change their behaviors, you've got to have the main stakeholders who provide a resource at the table. Because what's happened in the world, and it's worth level setting on a couple things.
Yeah.
For starters, I have several degrees in paleoclimate science, okay, and then using modern systems to look at old ancient systems, right? Okay, I work at the nexus of a lot of environmental policy, and I've spent I'm aligned with a certain party typically, but I think with my brain, okay, and I look at science objectively through the lens of climate science, right? And so I can work for a company that services many different industries because I have a basic understanding of that entire system. And I feel very confident that we can do things in a way that are good for society. Because what's an unacceptable reality is when we leave people behind on things like healthcare, food, water, okay? And so we've got to make sure that we take everybody with us as we talk about transitioning and getting together at COPs and things like that. So you can't leave a sector out. You also can't look at types of people, right? You can't say, we only want that kind of person here. Because again, then you'll isolate like 95% of modern society. So if we only had environmental NGOs there, we would literally not go anywhere because it would be an echo chamber of one voice. And the thing that we can look at, and whether people talk about DEI in a political sense or not, diversity of opinion is always good. It is what makes society more innovative, and it makes us stronger as a society. We just have to agree to disagree while we're going about it.
I agree with the majority of what you said.
Yes.
But do you accept that there are actors that are not there, that are not, let's say, within the range? So, stepping back, diversity of thought, diversity of opinion, agree to disagree, multiple viewpoints.
Yeah.
+1 to all that. Caveat,
Yeah.
within the range of, let's say, people using their brains. Facts, agreed
Yes.
upon facts, objective reality. My view is that many, but not all, of those so-called fossil fuel delegates at COP are there for that. But there are some that are there for something else. Active subversion and perversion of the process for their own obvious interest.
I would say the
I think you
same
probably agree with
about
that.
all stakeholders.
But you can see that the incentives are not aligned, right? Like, typically the fossil fuel delegate count is pitted against number of like indigenous voices or local land rights activists. And for all kinds of reasons, it's extremely difficult to get to a fancy international meeting that's full. You have to have 50 badges, to get coffee at this type of place. It's not exactly an inclusive place. But
Okay, wait. Let's go back to why is there a conference of parties in the first place? Okay? And who does it serve? It serves government. All right? Okay, so it is a government, nation-to-nation conference of parties. It's never been an NGO-driven thing. It is about governments coming together with the hub of the United Nations. And there are many kinds of COP, right? Mm-hmm. And the point of the COPs is to have representation of every committed member to come together and agree to certain things to try and drive society forward to a lower carbon state.
Yep.
In line with the Paris Agreement. All right. So it's government. Well, who does the government get their information from? All stakeholders. Because what does it take to run society? All stakeholders, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
And different governments, I would say, tell me if you agree, are getting their information from different types of stakeholders,
100%.
whoever they prefer, whoever
100%.
they have relationships with or
Whether
whatever.
they're democratic or non-democratic, right? But my point here is, at COPs, and so I like the fact that you're hearing that it's more inclusive to all things. I mean, I run into people from all sectors, right? And then you also, the other amazing part about it that I really, truly love is that it's sort of like bring your kid to COP Day, and you see families coming from the local region, and you get community engagement. That is amazing. But a lot of that event being able to accommodate that has to come with sponsorships and other things to facilitate that educational program in the local economy where it's being held.
Yeah.
Okay? And so everybody needs to be there. Whether everybody has the same pure purpose, no one ever has that in any sort of like government to government relationship. Everybody's got their own interests. But if we're all there to do something that is net positive, it cannot be a bad thing. right? I think we agree on that.
We almost agree. We almost agree, but not
All right,
entirely.
right.
But I think it's close enough
All right.
for now. I appreciate it.
That's it for part 1 of my conversation with Allyson Anderson Book. Now, if you love this episode, stay tuned for part 2, which is coming out next week. In part 2, we focus a little bit more on some rapid-fire questions that Allyson is not really used to getting asked directly, but I put them to her anyway, and she gives us some pretty honest answers. We talk about some misconceptions that people have about the energy world, and we try to clean some of those up. And finally, I ask Allyson to get out her crystal ball and think about how 100 years in the future, we might look back on today and tell the story of how the energy system evolved from now over the next couple of decades. You're not going to want to miss it. We always love hearing your feedback on this episode or any other episode at podontherise@gmail.com. Email us anytime at podontherise@gmail.com. Thanks very much to Allyson for letting us film this episode at the Baker Hughes Learning Center in Florence, Italy. That was a treat. We were in front of a gas turbine, as you heard us discuss. A pretty interesting site. Thanks also to our producer, Vish, for putting this together. Thank you, Stefano Dotza, for doing the filming and editing of a lot of this episode. And here, finally, is the music of the great Claire Davis to play us out. More soon, y'all.